So now we are asked to use electron ion equation or half reaction to show the formation of your negative ions to atoms. So we want to show those negative ions becoming atoms, similar to what we did last class. But last class we did positive ions. Now we're doing negative ions. Let's see how we do it. So now we are going to go ahead and we are going to draw to show half reaction that represents oxygen ion on the left becoming a oxygen atom, because that's what happens during electrolysis. All of those ions that were formed, they just become atoms. Okay, now first things first, remember we have to go ahead and we need to write out our equation. We need to put our ions on the left and then we put our atoms on the right, and then we, of course, we separate it by an arrow. The arrow is separating the reactants from the products. The next thing we need to do, as you remember, we need to balance the atoms and then we need to balance the ions. So how do we go ahead and balance the ions? On the left we have 1 and on the right we have 2. So how do we make both of them the same? What do we do? What do we do? Very good. Okay, so what you are going to do is you are going to multiply this 1, the side with 1, by 2. Okay, and that's gonna give you 2, right? So now we're gonna have 2 on both sides. So let's go ahead and insert our 2. Okay, so now my atoms are balanced. So now let's balance the ions. On the left you have -2 and on the right you have 2. Okay, so how do we go about making both of these sides 0? Okay, so this has 2 extra negative charges and this has 0. So what are you going to do to make sure that they are both 0? What are you going to do? Very good. You are going to go ahead and say remove -2. Okay, remove -2 electron. If you remove 2 electrons, then your left side is going to be 0 and your right side will be 0. Okay, so what we did was we just removed -2. Okay, we removed -2. That's what we did. All right, and that is it. Remove -2 electrons. Remove 2 electrons, 2 negative charges from this. That's gonna give you 0. Okay, and now both of your sides are the same. Or another way you could remember it, you can also say that you just repeat this -2. You just repeat it back over here with the e. That's that. That's it. Easy, right? So now what we are going to do is we are going to draw using half reactions. We are going to show the formation of bromine atom from its ion. So of course we're going to start with the ion. And how do we write bromine ion? Very good. Br -1. He's in group 7, so he's going to gain one more to have a -1 charge, and we put Br2. Why do we put Br2? Because bromine is diatomic. Have no fear of ice cold bear. Everyone in group 7 is diatomic. So I have this already, and I need to remember I need to balance my atoms and my ions. So on the left I have 1 and on the right I have 2 atoms of bromine. So how did we balance the atoms? Very good. You multiplied it by 2. Okay, very good. So you multiply this 1 by 2 and that's going to give you 2. So where are we going to now put the 2? In the front of bromine. Very good. Now we need to balance the ions. So how do we go ahead balancing the ions? On the left you have 1 negative charge, 1 negative charge here, multiply by that 2. So that is how many negative charges? You have -2. So that's 2 negative charges. Okay, so you have 2 negative charges on the left and you have 0 charges on the right. So how do we make it the same? How do we make it the same? What are we going to now do? Okay, so we need to now remove those electrons, right? We need to remove those negative electrons. And how many electrons are we going to remove in order for it to become 0? Very good. You're going to remove those 2. Okay, you're going to remove those 2 electrons. Remove those electrons. Okay, so -2, and that's going to give you Br2. So now you have 0, 0, 0. So now your charges are balanced, okay? With this negative 2e, you have 0 on the left, 0 charges on the left, and then you have 0 charges on the right. That's it. You got this. So now you are asked to write the half equation to show the formation of iodine ion becoming an atom. Now you are proficient, you know exactly what you're doing, so you know what to do. What's the first thing that you're going to do? Very good. You're going to go ahead and you're going to draw your ions on the left and your atom on the right, and then of course you have your arrows separating them. So you have your ion, which is iodine. Remember, iodine is in group 7. So he's going to gain one more negative charge, and he's gonna gain one more electron, and he's going to have a charge of -1. Okay, and then you have your iodine. Now remember, I hope you remember that iodine is diatomic. Have no fear of ice cold bear. Everyone in group 7 is diatomic, hence I have I too. The next thing we're going to do is we need to balance our atoms and we need to balance our ions. So on my left hand side, I have how many atoms? How many atoms do I have on my left hand side? Very good. I have 1. And how many atoms do I have on the right? I have 2. So how do we make them the same now? You got this. All right. You are going to go ahead and you are going to multiply the 1 by 2. That's what you do. Okay, and then when you multiply the 1 by 2, you get 2. So you put the 2 in the front of iodine, and now the atoms are the same. The next thing is we need to make sure the ions are the same. On the left hand side, we have 2 negative, and on the right hand side, we have 0. So how do we make them the same? What do we do? Yes, you are also correct. What we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and remove the extra -2 charges. We're going to remove it in order for us to get it to be 0. So -2, -2 charges or -2 electrons extra here, right? -2 electrons extra. Okay, and over here we have 0. We want them to be the same, right? So what we did was we said that we would remove these -2 electrons. Look, that's what we did right here. And when you remove those 2 electrons, you're going to have 0 on the left and 0 on the right. And that is it. So now we're going to use half reactions to show the formation of hydroxide ion to water. Okay, so let's go. So you have your equation here is OH negative, that's hydroxide formula, arrow, and then it produces water plus oxygen. I want you to make a note that anytime you have hydroxide ion being released as an ion, it always produces water and oxygen. So this is something that you just memorize this, okay? So now the next slide we're going to balance. So anytime you have to balance um, the equation to give you anytime you have to balance hydroxide to produce water and oxygen, all you do is you just memorize this equation right here. Don't hurt your head, just memorize this equation right here and you would be okay because it never changes. Hydroxide 4OH minus 4E to give you 2 water plus oxygen. Just memorize it and you'll be just fine.